Okay, so this video is just going to quickly cover about the use of frequency words with the simple present tense. We basically have two groups of frequency words. And when we talk about frequency, what we're talking about is how many times something happens. Now, frequency words in the simple present tense always mean habitual action. So we had the two meanings of the simple present tense being a general truth or custom, and the second one being habitual action. If you have any of these frequency words in the sentence, you're really talking about habits, repeated actions. So we can divide up the frequency words into two groups. We can have the positive ones, meaning basically 50% or more. So we start at the top with always, meaning 100%, and then we work our way down from there, getting less and less and less, with sometimes and occasionally being closer to 50% than to 100%. Then we have a group of words that we would say are negative, meaning less than 50%, or not most of the time. So we have at the very bottom not ever and never, meaning 0%, and seldom, meaning less than 50% of the time. But the important thing in talking about these is we need to talk about where do we put them in a sentence when we're writing with them. Okay, so let's first look at a couple of them. Now, when we are talking, when we are using most verbs, we're going to put the frequency adverb or frequency word, so in this case always, between the subject and the verb. So in this sentence, Hannah always eats lunch at school. Hannah is the subject, eats is the verb, and always is the frequency word. Okay? So this is the general rule for verbs that are not to be. But when we use the verb to be, we have a different order. We have the subject, then the verb to be, and then the frequency adverb, followed by the complement. So it's important to know the difference between regular verbs and the verb to be because the location is different. Now we also have some of these frequency adverbs that can go at the beginning of the sentence. So we have sometimes Hannah eats lunch at school. So there's a couple of these that we can use in this way. We can also put them at the end of the sentence. Hannah eats lunch at school sometimes. Now we can't do this with all of the frequency adverbs. And we'll go over in class which ones we can and which ones we can't. There's also frequency expressions like every week. And every week can be put at the beginning of the sentence followed by a comma. But it can also be put at the end of the sentence. And in this case, it's not followed by a comma. But it can't be put in the middle of the sentence. So saying Hannah every week eats lunch at school is incorrect. With the frequency expressions or the frequency phrase, whichever word you want to use, it has to go either at the beginning or at the end. So let's look at making questions for the simple present tense with frequency. Now, the yes/no question is formed with the words with ever. When we want an answer of yes or no, we will use ever in the question. So the way that we'd form it with a regular verb, we have the helping verb do, then the subject, and then ever comes after the subject before the main verb. So does he ever walk to school? And is he ever happy? So in this case, is can be a helping verb, and there's no main verb. So is he ever happy? So we put the subject and then this frequency adverb after it. So what you should do now is go ahead and pause this and write down, change these ones into questions. Go ahead and practice that, and then I'll give you what the questions are. All right, so the first question would be, does she ever sleep? The second one would be, does he ever read? The third one would be, do they ever buy? The fourth one would be, do we ever ask? And the last one would be, do you ever run? Now there's also how often questions, okay? And in these questions, you're not asking for a yes or a no, but the answer that you're going to give is going to be a frequency adverb. How often is asking you for out of 100%, what percent out of 100 do you do this thing? So in this case, we have the same construction that we always have with questions. In this case, we start with a question word, and it's a question phrase, how often, and then we're followed by a helping verb, do, followed by the subject, you, and then followed by the verb, walk, and then ended with the complement to school. Now, when we're using the verb to be, it's going to be different, right? We'll start again with the question word, and then we have the helping verb is, and then the subject, and then we have nothing in the main verb slot, and then we have the complement happy. So again, we have this question word, helping verb, and then the subject. So what I want you to do now is the same thing, just as practice. Change these into questions. And then I will review them for you. So go ahead and pause it and change these ones into questions, and then you can check your answers. All right, so the first one would be, how often does she sleep? The second one, how often does he read? The third one, how often do they buy? The fourth one, how often do we ask? And the fifth one, how often do you run? So remember, the difference between the yes/no questions and the how often questions is that the yes/no questions will use the word ever, and the answer to those questions is either yes or no. And the how often questions will not use the word ever, and the answer to them will be a frequency adverb. All right, and we'll do some more practice of this in class. So bring any questions that you have. Take care. Bye.